Well, I'm absolutely gobsmacked at the numbers that have turned up today, so thank you very, very much for coming and making time this afternoon for this really, really important gathering of people to listen to Professor Stuart Khan, who's going to tell us about mitigation and what we can do with the Warragamba Dam. I'd like initially to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Durham people, and I'd like to pay my respects to those past and present. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. Ladies, if you need to go to the toilet, it's over here on my left. Gentlemen, if you need to go, you're going to go out this door and around to the back. In case that you do need to leave, all the doors will be open so you can leave. I'm looking down and I can see so many faces here who I know have had dreadful trouble with floods. You've been devastated 4 times in the last 15 months, and I know what you're going through. My name's Christine Payne, and I've been in the Hawkesbury for 44 years. Most of that time I've lived in the middle of Windsor, and I've seen floods come and go so often, or not. You know, we had 20 years that we didn't have them, but we've lived through floods and we're resilient and we know how to live through floods. The last 15 months has been horrendous and it's not marvellous about. I have never seen in my 44 years here the velocity of the floodwaters that was here in July, and I know it's wrecked many, many houses. If you've got time, go down and have a look at Cornwallis and see gouges out of the river bigger than football fields. I'm part of a group called Hawkesbury Community Alliance, which has been formed as an umbrella group to represent the views of multiple community groups here in the Hawkesbury. The other people who are in this group with me, I'd like to introduce to you. This is only a recently formed group, and we formed this group because we saw the need that the community needed to get together to talk about what we can do as a community, as a whole community, together and work towards doing something to stop this flooding. Not to stop the flooding, we're not that very clever, but we can at least do something about mitigating it. Sam Magnuson, when I call your name, can you put your hand up and stand up? Sam. Jendi Parioton. Abigail Wall. Venetia Wilson. And in the engine room, we have that amazing couple, Fiona Harmon and Sophie Devine. These girls have worked so hard to put this together today, and I thank them very much for it. As a community action group, we cover, and under our umbrella of the Hawkesbury Community Action, are many local groups, and they are named on the handout that you've got to take home with you. I'm sure they'll be in touch with you, or you can get in touch with them to find out and get more information. We've been lucky to have some members of Parliament with us and some councillors. Robin Preston, is Robin here? No? Not yet, right. Susan Templeman was an apology, but Susan sent Mark Andrews, her Chief of Staff. Mark, where are you? And also Peter Primrose from the Upper House. Peter, I know you live in the mountains. You are a great stalwart for the Hawkesbury, and thank you very much for all you do. We've got councillors, Mary Lyons Bucket. Thanks, Mary. Danielle Wheeler, thank you. Nathan Zambrogno, thanks, Nathan. Eddie Dogmarty, is Eddie here? No. Les Sheether. Thanks, Eddie. Les Sheether, I know, is here. Thanks, Les. Do we have any other councillors? Have I missed anybody? No. We did invite all the councillors. We invited a lot of MPs. We invited the mayors. We didn't get apologies from any of those. The only 2 apologies we had, one was from Chris Minns, the leader of the opposition, and Rose Jackson, an MP. This forum is not about the dam, raising the dam wall. We would ask you to park that debate for further forums. We want to talk about something that we can do, not in my lifetime. I'm never going to see the the dam wall raised. And looking around in this audience, I don't think there's many of you that will either. So I think we should be talking about the here and now, and we want somebody to listen to us. And I'm not sure how the hell we get people to listen to us, but this is a start. So I thank you all very much for coming. I'd like to introduce to you now Samantha Magnuson, who, like many of us here in the room, has been severely affected by the floods. Her story is a sad one. She's probably not going to talk about it, but she is our MC for the day. So, Sam, it's over to you, and thank you very much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you, Christine. And to echo your comments, thank you to everyone who has come here today, for taking an interest in our community and for what is happening in the Hawkesbury. To be honest, I wish I wasn't here today, because the reason we're all here is an absolute tragedy. We know another flood is coming, we don't know exactly when, and we don't know how big it will be. 10 metres, 14, 17, even bigger. But what we do know is that it's on its way. 2 weather events, we're told, are likely to collide over Australia for the first time in a decade. Some may remember that similar weather phenomenon 10 years ago when historic floods devastated Brisbane. We will have a wetter than average spring and heavy rainfall expected as early as this month. To quote Sky News Chief Meteorologist Tom Saunders last week, we are in pretty rare territory. For us in the Hawkesbury, the ramifications of this could not be worse. We also know that the dams are being kept full. Today, Warragamba sits at 100%, as it has done for weeks. The soil is wet, the riverbanks are severely compromised, the roads are damaged, and there are those of us here today who are desperately trying to remediate and protect our properties before that next flood. Because if it arrives, you know that you may not have property left to protect. For many, the prospect of another flood is just too much. Hawkesbury resident Suzette Turner told the Sydney Morning Herald this week, and I quote, "It's devastating. I want to give up. We are so exhausted and tired. Financially, it has ruined us. Emotionally, we are broken. I don't know if I can do another flood. I don't know how we'll survive." And while everyone has a different story to tell, there is not a community in the Hawkesbury Valley unscarred by the damage wrought by 4 flood events in 18 months. Whether it's those of you from Lower Portland struggling to get out of your properties on a daily basis, organisations and businesses who just can't build back due to the economic impact of flooding, those of you stranded west of the river, unable to turn up to work or to run your businesses, the farmers and the landholders at Cornwallis who have just been decimated, and to those of you from McDonald Valley who have been pretty much left abandoned and have to run your own show. What we need today is bold action. We know that the state government has not understood the looming catastrophe. We know this because they have told us they won't allow Warragamba Dam to be drawn down to mitigate the impact of flooding. They have given us many reasons not to do it. They've also told us that the benefits of such action would be minimal at best. Just to be very clear, the proposition that Sydney's drinking water would be at risk should the dam be drawn down is abject nonsense. Let's also be clear that drawing down the dam by 12 metres to reduce the flood peak by 2 metres would make a dramatic difference to those whose houses flooded by 2 metres. Instead of addressing the imminent risk we all face, the government is instead pushing ahead with a plan to raise the dam wall sometime in the next decade. We don't have time to raise the dam wall. And that is why, as Christine said, we are not using this meeting today to debate the merits or otherwise of the plan to do so. that project is 10 years too late. It's too late for those of us here today who will again face the terror of another flood in the coming weeks and months. Be under no illusion, we are facing a catastrophe of proportions never seen in the valley before. We have only one button to press to help reduce the consequences of the next flood. We want the New South Wales Government to change legislation to allow Water New South Wales to lower the water level of the dam by 12 metres ahead of the next rain event, giving those of us downstream 2 metres off the height of the next major flood. The good news is that floods are, according to the peak body for flood practitioners, the most manageable type of natural disaster. And we hope that today we can shed some expert light on what is possible in terms of using Warragamba Dam as a flood mitigation dam, how quickly this could be achieved and what would be involved, as well as understanding the accuracy of long-range weather forecasting. We are delighted that Dr. Stuart Khan could join us today. Dr. Khan is a professor in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering and Director of the Australian Graduate School of Engineering. He is widely considered the leading expert in water management in this country. If you would like to follow the presentation and you're finding it difficult to see on screen, there are QR codes around the room and you can follow it online. Would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Khan, who will be delighted to take questions at the completion of his presentation on the topic of today's discussion, reducing the water level of the Warragamba Dam in order to mitigate the impacts of flooding. Dr. Stuart Khan.
Thanks to the Hawkesbury Community Alliance for inviting me to come and speak to you today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and it obviously is the most important issue to be discussing right here, right now. So I'm grateful to be able to contribute.